If government officials funneled $400 million of your tax money into their own pockets, you would have heard about it by now, right?
He has $1 billion fund whose own bureaucrats say reminds them of the sponsorship scandal, whose executives give money to their own companies.
But you probably haven't, because when Liberals are in power, the parliamentary press gallery doesn't like to highlight Liberal corruption.
There's been explosive testimony by a whistleblower on this Prime Minister's $1 billion green slush fund that's seen $150 million misappropriated and gone to Liberal insiders.
Liberal appointees to a board that got to make decisions as to which companies got grants worth millions of dollars of taxpayers' money gave those grants to their own companies. A scandal like this should be the lead item on the news day after day. There should be banner headlines on front pages every time there's a new development. There should be shadowy figures in parking garages smoking cigarettes, handing out documents to hardworking investigative reporters.
I can't tell you who I am, but I worked on the campaign.
Ladies and gentlemen, hold on to your seats because we have explosive news about Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. This is the kind of scandal you just can't miss. Misguided Liberal supporters have hailed Mr. Trudeau as a progressive, charismatic Liberal leader, but once again, he is embroiled in a sordid corruption scam.
Prime Minister's $1 billion green slush fund scandal. We already know as well he forces two.
The source of the scandal is the $1 billion Green Slush Fund. The Liberal Government and Sustainable Development Technology Canada, SDTC, were supposed to use the Green Slush Fund to support innovative companies that could protect Canada's natural environment and stave off global warming. Instead, Liberal insiders have embezzled a cool $400 million.
Parliament is paralyzed, unable to work on the problem of doubling housing costs or 2 million people at the food bank because the government is refusing to respect your ruling to turn over evidence in the criminal investigation of the latest Liberal scandal. At issue is that Liberal appointees directed $400 million to companies they own involving 184 conflicts of interest according to the Auditor General. Why is the Prime Minister breaking your ruling to cover up criminal evidence in the latest Liberal scandal?
The Auditor General of Canada has concluded that directors had awarded funding to environmental projects that were ineligible or that involved projects that were conflicts of interest existed. In total, $123 million of contracts were given inappropriately, with $59 million being given to projects that never should have been awarded any money at all.
The Auditor General found in the Green Slush Fund that 82% of the contracts were awarded inappropriately. Now, that's an A-. I mean, when I was in school, if I got an A-, I'd be pretty excited. So, they've got an A- in corruption. And I suspect if they keep working hard at it like they are, they could get that grade up to an A or an A+ before the next election, something that they can be really proud of. Get that A- in corruption up to an A+.
This investigation has uncovered shocking details about the Prime Minister's unethical actions, enough to make your head spin. It's a labyrinth of cronyism, questionable financial transactions, conflicts of interest at the highest levels of government, and pure, unadulterated theft. The common people in Canada are blazing mad. Imagine that food prices are going crazy in Canada at this moment in time, and more than half the population is struggling to feed their kids.
It's been 9 years of this Prime Minister promising trickle-down economics, that if he just takes money away from small businesses and workers, it will go from one level of government to another level of government to another level of government, it will trickle down. And now, 25% of Canadians are living in poverty, something he tried to cover up, just like he covered up his own data showing $25 billion of extra costs with the carbon tax, nearly $2,000 in carbon tax cover-up for every single family. How can we trust anything he says about taxes, poverty, or money?
So, what exactly has rogue Prime Minister Justin Trudeau been caught up in? And why is this latest corruption scandal so significant? Let's dive right in and see what the so-called Liberal government has been up to behind our backs and under our own nose.
Corruption, abuse, resignations, multiple investigations, and at least 150 million tax dollars illegally given out by Liberal insiders to other Liberal insiders and to themselves. That's Sustainable Development Technologies Canada after 9 years of this NDP Liberal government and that Prime Minister that's just not worth the cost. The Auditor General is set to release a damning report on SDTC tomorrow. So will the Prime Minister shut down the billion-dollar slush fund? Will he commit to get Canadians their money back? And will he guarantee Canadians that none of these corrupt executives will get $1 of...
The investigation into Justin Trudeau's alleged corruption begins with his ties to major corporations. These aren't your average run-of-the-mill companies. We're talking about multinational giants that have deep pockets and significant influence in Canada. For example, SNC-Lavalin is one of the world's largest engineering and construction companies. In 2023, it changed its name to Atkins Realis, and in 2024, it had a revenue of over $8 billion.
Relief for SNC-Lavalin at the Montreal courthouse. A very public legal fight finally over. SNC's construction division pleaded guilty to fraud. It now admits it paid millions to Saadi Gaddafi, the son of former Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi, to try to win contracts. Now the company will pay a $280 million penalty.
Trudeau and his inner circle have received millions of dollars in bribes from these corporations in exchange for government contracts. Imagine this. The companies that stand to gain the most from Canadian government policies have a much closer relationship with Trudeau than the public ever guessed. These revelations raise some serious questions. Is Trudeau using his office to line the pockets of the corporate elite? Is he making decisions in the interest of the people? Or are corporate lobbyists and executives pulling his strings?
After 9 years, this NDP Liberal government is not worth the cost or the corruption. Today, the Auditor General confirms a full investigation into the Liberal government deals awarded to Arrive scam contractor GC Strategies. This shady two-person firm that did absolutely no IT work charged taxpayers $2,600 per hour for over $100 million in government contracts. Sole source deals that froze out hard-working Canadian companies. In the Arrive scam scandal alone, the Liberals' preferred contractor, GC Strategies, pocketed $20 million of a $60 million price tag for an app that should have cost a fraction of the price. Why did the Prime Minister give these Arrive scam middlemen $100 million since he took office? And when will the Prime Minister stop robbing Canadians of their hard-earned money and doling it out to well-connected Liberal elites? After 9 years of these NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time is up for these corrupt Liberals and their well-connected friends. Common sense Conservatives are going to end the corruption and bring home a carbon tax election.
Is Liberal President Justin Trudeau a corporate puppet? The public is demanding answers. No one respects a so-called leader who's more interested in appeasing corporate donors than serving the people. Liberal governments are not supposed to place power and profits over people and social justice. So, why has President Trudeau...
Prime Minister's Arrive scam is now flailing out of control. Today, revelations from a Joël Denis Bellevance that one Arrive scam company received $250 million in contracts. Let's get this straight. It's a company with 4 employees, headquartered in the basement of a tiny cottage. They got IT contracts even though they admit they do no IT work. $250 million? WTF.
You must remember this, the infamous SNC-Lavalin scandal that boiled to the surface just a few years ago. This time, President Trudeau interfered in a criminal prosecution in order to protect a major construction firm from corruption charges. Once again, it looks like history is repeating itself.
CTV's Kevin Gallagher starts off our election coverage with the Liberals.
Justin Trudeau continued to face questions about a 2.5-year-old scandal on the campaign trail today.
Have you ever personally been contacted by the RCMP about the SNC-Lavalin affair?
No, I have not.
All sparked by accusations that the Liberal government is covering up key details about the SNC-Lavalin affair by not releasing cabinet secrets. This according to excerpts from Jody Wilson-Raybould's new book. At the time of writing, the police assigned to criminally examine the SNC-Lavalin matter remain unable to access all relevant information.
Trudeau is once again pulling strings to benefit key players in his political circle. The investigation reveals that high-ranking officials within the Trudeau government have intentionally overlooked corruption in order to secure lucrative deals for these companies. SNC-Lavalin is just the tip of the iceberg.
For 9 years, Justin Trudeau has shown that he's not worth the cost or the corruption. The Speaker has just recently ruled that all House business, all government business must be put aside while members of Parliament consider Liberal corruption. First, we had the case of the Green Slush Fund, the SDTC fund, where the Auditor General found over $330 million funneled to Liberal insiders' own businesses. She found massive conflicts of interest. Basically, these Liberal-appointed board members who made the decision as to which companies got money, taxpayers' money, from this fund, were funneling that money to their own businesses or to the businesses of their close friends. So the Auditor General has blown the whistle on that, yet the government refuses to hand over the documents to the RCMP. The House of Commons passed a production order demanding that all documents, all information that the Auditor General uncovered, plus any documents that might exist in any government department related to this scandal, be handed over to the RCMP. The government is refusing, and as a result, the House will be seized with this corruption matter until they hand over the document.
Trudeau has continued to act with the same disregard for ethical boundaries as he did back then. His own party's integrity is on the line, and this scandal could have serious consequences for his political future and theirs. The Liberal Party of Canada is hemorrhaging integrity.
Suffering with the cost of living crisis that Justin Trudeau caused with his runaway inflation, well, millions of Canadians are visiting a food bank for the first time, and young Canadians are giving up on the dream of home ownership as housing costs have doubled under the NDP Liberal government. It's clear once again that the Liberals will always stop and enrich their friends while they impoverish.
One of the most shocking aspects of this corruption scandal is Trudeau's failure to disclose potential conflicts of interest when it came to some of the most significant decisions he made during his time in office. In politics, transparency is everything. If you're making decisions that involve billions of taxpayer dollars, people have the right to know about any relationships or financial interests that could influence your choices. It's their money, Justin, by the way, not yours.
What happened over the past year shouldn't have happened. I take responsibility for it.
It's a bombshell report that could reshape the fall federal election. Canada's ethics watchdog says Prime Minister Justin Trudeau violated the Conflict of Interest Act by pressuring his former Attorney General Jody Wilson-Raybould to halt the criminal prosecution of SNC-Lavalin.
Do you have any plans to resign or at least apologize formally?
I recognize that this was a situation that shouldn't have happened.
The PM responding in Niagara-on-the-Lake this afternoon to the findings in Ethics Commissioner Mario Dion's report. It states Trudeau violated the section of the Conflict of Interest Act that bans public office holders from using their position to influence decisions that could help a third party. In explaining his findings, Dion writes, the Prime Minister directly and through his senior officials used various means to exert influence over Miss Wilson-Raybould. Dion goes on to say that SNC-Lavalin would have benefited financially had Wilson-Raybould given in to the pressure applied by Trudeau.
This lack of transparency has sparked outrage across the political spectrum, and critics are demanding that Trudeau be held accountable for his actions. The Prime Minister's credibility is on the line, and it remains to be seen how long his corruption can endure.
Or political interference to intervene was not appropriate.
The report comes in the wake of Wilson-Raybould's explosive testimony before the House of Commons Justice Committee in February. The former AG claiming she faced consistent pressure and veiled threats from Trudeau and his staff to have federal prosecutors offer a remediation agreement to SNC-Lavalin instead of criminal prosecution. The Montreal-based engineering giant is facing charges of fraud and bribery in relation to alleged payments made to secure government contracts in Libya. The Ethics Commissioner's findings were released just over 2 months before the federal election.
The correct response is for Canadians to vote out a corrupt...
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau may have been cozying up to the corporate elite, But it's ordinary Canadians who are left to pick up the pieces. The scandal raises an important question. How much damage has this corruption done to the average citizen?
If you don't believe me, Justin, come speak to the students who live in homeless shelters while they go to school, because the average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Toronto after 8 years of your leadership is $2,500 a month.
From rising taxes to skyrocketing housing prices, Canadians are already struggling with the consequences of the policies Justin Trudeau has put in place. But now, with allegations of corruption hanging over his head, there's growing frustration. People want to know if the money they've paid in taxes has been used wisely, or if it's just lined the pockets of wealthy corporations who have friends in high places.
The skyrocketing cost of living.
I was skipping meals because I was struggling to afford my food and my rent.
2 million Canadians had to use the food bank in 1 month alone.
No wonder crime is rocketing after 8 years of Justin Trudeau.
Canada is worse than you think. Just 2 years ago, a simple 2-bedroom apartment in Toronto cost on average $2,400 Canadian dollars. Today, that's $3,300, an average increase of 25% per year, and that's not an outlier.
I just found out my rent's gonna be increased from $2,100 a month to $2,400 a month for a 1-bedroom condo in Toronto.
Canadians are questioning whether their government has been prioritizing their needs, or whether it has been more concerned with making deals that benefit the political class. This corruption scandal has ignited a public outcry, and Trudeau's approval ratings are plummeting as Canadians start to demand accountability.
Well, things continue to look bleak for Justin Trudeau and the Liberals when it comes to how voters are feeling about both the leader and the party. New polling done exclusively for Global News by Ipsos shows Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives holding a comfortable lead, while a majority of Canadians think it is time for Trudeau to step aside. Let's break this down. Daryl Brooker from Ipsos joins me now with the latest. Daryl, it is always great to see you. Your headline is quite intriguing. Despite summer heat, Liberal troubles remain frozen. How frozen are they right now?
Frozen is 6 feet deep, middle of February frozen on the Rideau Canal in Ottawa. These numbers are grim. They haven't changed basically in a year. All they seem to do, all the fundamentals underneath the vote numbers just seem to be getting worse for the Prime Minister and the Liberal Party.
The big question everyone is asking now is, will Justin Trudeau survive this scandal? For a leader who once portrayed himself as a champion of transparency, fairness, and inclusion, this scandal could be a career-ending blow. The political fallout is already being felt across Canada. Opposition parties are rallying, calling for an immediate investigation, and many are even calling for Trudeau to step down.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will face mounting pressure from his caucus this week to step down from the leadership of the Liberal Party. A number of backbench MPs are talking about formally releasing an ask for the Prime Minister to consider the future of the Liberal Party in making a decision about whether to stay at the helm of it. CTV News spoke to 24 Liberal MPs today. About half of them say they were aware of a so-called letter circulating, but they have not signed it. Half a dozen of the MPs say they had heard that about 30 people are signing it, but had not seen the signatures.
This scandal could be the beginning of the end for his time as Prime Minister, especially if more revelations continue to surface. But let's not forget that Justin Trudeau has survived scandals before. He's survived the SNC-Lavalin debacle, the blackfaced scandal, his hypocritical stance on climate change.
This weak Prime Minister has lost control. He's lost control of immigration, lost control of our borders. And now we're facing massive threats to our economy. And now lost control of his caucus, who are saying that they've been intimidated into voting in favor of his tiny tax trick. He's lost control, but he's holding on.
It's tempting to think that this could be the scandal that takes him down, the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. But we must remember that Trudeau has mastered the art of weathering political storms. He is a true weatherman.
Have it both ways. You were asking me about, well, what about unintended consequences as you move forward on this? And then, well, why aren't you moving quicker? Well, they sort of cancel each other out. We have to make sure.
You could have moved a long time ago, but
well,
yeah.
we have to make sure. Well, we did make moves a long time ago. We brought in a grocery rebate that helped 11 million Canadians. We accelerated some things around supply chains. We supported some of the farmers. We stood up for, there's lots of things we did do that meant it would have been worse had we not acted to have Canadians' backs as we went through the pandemic.
One thing is clear. The Canadian people must play a crucial role in holding their leaders accountable. Trudeau's political survival depends on whether or not he can regain the public's trust. The real power lies in the hands of voters. If Canadians are outraged enough by the corruption allegations, they can and must demand action. Through protests, petitions, or voting in the next election, the public can make sure their leaders serve the interests of the people. This could be the moment when Canadians rise up and demand better leadership. Leadership that prioritizes the interests of the people, not the pockets of the powerful.
We have a government that has a history of entitlement, patronage, and straight-up corruption. This is the most corrupt government in modern Canadian history. And I saw one Liberal member thinks it's funny, but we have Dominic LeBlanc found guilty of breaching the Conflict of Interest Act. He's a senior minister in this government. We have Mary Ng, who's found guilty of breaching the Conflict of Interest Act. She's a senior minister in this government. We have Bill Morneau, who's found guilty of breaching multiple sections of...
So, what do you think? Will Prime Minister Justin Trudeau weather the storm and emerge unscathed, or is this the beginning of the end of his political career? Stay tuned, because as the investigation continues, there could be even more shocking revelations that change the entire political landscape in Canada. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more updates on this breaking story. Until next time, keep your eyes on the headlines. Things are about to get even more interesting.
This was the first, but not the last test of the Liberal minority this fall. The Conservative-led push to bring down the government was defeated, despite pressure from Pierre Poilievre to send Canadians to the polls.
He wants a climate change election. Let's have that election in the right time.
Will he call it today?
The Bloc and NDP voted with the government, stating they still have confidence in Justin Trudeau. But before the vote was even called, Bloc leader Yves-François Blanchet issued an ultimatum, giving the government until the end of October to help enact a pair of Bloc bills about pensions and supply management,